é inteligência? Será que é possível medi-la? Apontar quem sabe mais ou quem sabe menos? Será que um dos maiores gênios da humanidade, Albert Einstein, sempre foi brilhante ou sofreu como nós antes de merecer uma estátua como essa aqui? Einstein nunca foi o favorito dos professores. Foi fora do ambiente acadêmico que ele desenvolveu a brilhante teoria da relatividade. No programa de hoje, vamos percorrer as novas estradas que levam ao conhecimento. O psicólogo americano Howard Gardner deu um passo adiante na compreensão dessas questões. Depois de 2 décadas de estudos, ele afirma que a mente humana é composta de múltiplas inteligências e elas são independentes. Ele descreveu cientificamente 8 tipos diferentes de inteligência.
There might be a 9th intelligence, which I call the existential intelligence. It's the intelligence of big questions. What's going to happen to us? Does God love me? What is love? What is God? I think this is a useful concept, but I'm not certain because I would like to know whether there are parts of the brain which evolved to deal with questions which are too big or too little to perceive, these questions of existence.
É hora de descobrir como funciona essa gigantesca rede de sinapses que opera o nosso cérebro.
When most people think of intelligence, they think of it as a single capacity that people have some of, or a lot of, or very little of. And if you have a lot of it, you're smart in everything. If you don't have much, you're dumb in everything. Over 25 other, so you could be good with one intelligence. It doesn't predict whether you'll be good in other ones. So you might be very good in spatial intelligence, finding your way around, handling complex spatial environments. You may or may not be good with music. You might be very good in music. We don't know if you're good in understanding other people. That's the basic idea of multiple intelligence theory.
Gardner identificou alguns tipos de inteligência. As principais são a lógico-matemática, que é a capacidade de lidar com objetos e abstrações, como os números, e solucionar problemas. A linguística é a habilidade de lidar com as palavras, ler, escrever e se comunicar. A musical é usada para compor, executar e perceber a música. A espacial está relacionada à visualização de formas, ao sentido de orientação e ao equilíbrio. A sinestésica, com o controle do corpo, movimento, destreza. A interpessoal é a capacidade de compreender o estado de espírito das outras pessoas. E a intrapessoal, de entender e gerenciar os próprios sentimentos e desejos. Há muitos anos, a estrutura física do cérebro humano permanece praticamente inalterada. O que muda de tempos em tempos é a maneira como nós usamos essa ferramenta extremamente versátil de acordo com as nossas necessidades.
In any particular society, at any particular time, one intelligence might be valued over the other. Certainly, when we were living as hunter-gatherers, what I call naturalist intelligence, being able to know what to eat, what will poison you, what animals to pursue, which animals to run away from, was very important. That's not so important anymore. Nonetheless, I think our whole consumer society is based upon that naturalist ability of telling one sneaker from another, one automobile from another. Also, nowadays, when we worry about the whole survival of the planet because of climate change, global warming, the absence of naturalist intelligence, of being able to make distinctions in nature, can be very damaging. So yes, intelligence value goes up and down because of history and culture and accidents.
How does it work at mind? Each type of intelligence is controlled by a part of the brain?
It all depends. Some tasks require that you use more than one intelligence. You and I are talking now, and that's obviously linguistic intelligence, but it's also interpersonal. You have to try to understand what another human being is saying, what he's trying to get at. If suddenly we broke into song, if I had to sing my answer, that would be a musical intelligence.
The famous IQ test, is that?
If you want to know how somebody will do in a certain kind of school, you can use an IQ test. But I'll tell you something much better than an IQ test, last year's grades. If I know how well you did in school last year, I can predict much more accurately how you will do this year than if I know your IQ. IQ tests are still valuable for certain purposes, but in my view, they don't begin to cover the whole range of intelligences. For example, we were talking about naturalist intelligence. There's nothing on the IQ test which talks about whether you can make distinctions in nature. Understanding of yourself, nothing in the intelligence test. So the more that we value these other intelligences, the more we would need to be able to assess for them.
But do you think we have to have multiple intelligences tests?
No. I think that if somebody is doing well, we should say a prayer of thanks and leave them alone. If somebody's having difficulty in school, then we want to understand why. If somebody's having difficulty at the workplace, you might have straight A's, perfect score in school, but when you're in the workplace, you could be a disaster, not working with other people. So we need to know what intelligences are lacking or need to be enhanced.
How is it possible to apply your theory at education nowadays?
Well, the theory has had enormous impact in education all around the world, much more than I ever would have anticipated. In the summer of 2009, we published a book called Multiple Intelligences Around the World, 42 authors from 15 different countries describing it. So it's had lots of influence, but the influence didn't come from me. I didn't say, because we have 8 or 9 intelligences, we need to do this, this, this. Rather, people took this scientific claim and they drew different educational implications. After 25 years, I think there are only 2 major implications of the theory. One is that we should individuate. That means we should know as much as possible about each learner and teach that person in ways that he can learn and assess him in ways in which he can show what he's learned. The other one is to pluralize. That means anything we teach, we should teach it in a number of different ways, because then you reach more students, because some learn more from language, some learn more from music, some learn more from role play, some learn more from humor. And also, any person who understands well can think about things in lots of ways. If you think about yourself, your family, your community, you can't just talk about it. You can make a drawing, you can act it out. And so individuation and pluralization, to me, those are the 2 primary educational implications. But in Latin America, one of the things we found is people use the theory as a way of democratizing schools, calling attention to more abilities, flattening the hierarchy, even trying to change society. That's nothing that was in my original mind, but if people want to use the theory for that purpose.
This generation is a multitasking generation. It is an advantage.
We now recognize that some people who can multitask are an advantage because nothing escapes their attention completely. But there's also mounting evidence that multitasking gets in the way of deep understanding of things, because to go something deeply into things, you have to be able to spend time and not to be distracted. And if all the time you're worrying about instant messaging and about Friendster or MySpace or YouTube, then you don't have that ability to go deeply into things. Nonetheless, I think probably people who can shift their attention rapidly and readily have an advantage now, which they didn't before the new media emerged.
How can we apply your theory at work?
Interestingly, as a teacher, I haven't made that much use of my theory because I work with graduate students and their job is to write a thesis, and there's not that many ways to write a thesis. But at the workplace, I make use of the ideas a lot. I used to think that the goal of the workplace was to find people just like me, and now I think that's a waste of time. I do what I do, so I try to hire people who have different kinds of strengths, and I try to put them together in ways that complement and balance one another. And anybody who's involved in human resources has to pay attention to intelligences, not only on the basis of who to hire, but who gets promotion, what new abilities you need when you're promoted, how to put teams together so they work. So I think the multiple intelligence theory is a natural for anybody in the workplace.
Is it possible to improve intelligence?
Sure. any intelligence can be improved probably as long as you live. You have to work hard at it, be motivated, have good resources, meaning good teachers, good computer programmers, good coaches, and you have to learn from your mistakes. But one of the big changes we have in our understanding of the brain is the brain is much more flexible. We call it much more plastic. Even as you get to be as old as I, can still learn new things. But still, if I wanted to learn Chinese, I'd rather be 3 than my age.
What can block intelligence?
Well, we have different genetic potentials, and I'm never going to be an Einstein or a Mozart. They had different potentials. But I think much more of a blockage is the belief that you can't get better. Intelligence theories which emphasize human effort are much more useful than intelligence theories which say it's in our genes. Because if you believe it's in your genes, you can't change it. There's a saying in Japan, fail with 5, pass with 4. That means if you're lazy and insist on sleeping 5 hours a night, you'll fail the examination. But if you're industrious and work harder and settle for 4 hours of sleep, you'll pass. That's a much healthier view of the mind.
Você viu no programa de hoje que não é fácil medir a inteligência. Ela varia de acordo com cada um. Todos nós temos uma mistura singular dos vários tipos de inteligência, o que torna a questão bem mais complexa do que dividir a humanidade entre inteligentes e limitados. Quer saber mais? Entre no nosso blog. O endereço é g1.com.br/globonews. Lá você vai encontrar vídeos e informações exclusivas. Participe, critique, deixe sua contribuição e faça o programa com a gente. Até a semana que vem.